Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Commodity TV and a new edition of our online interview series. And we want to talk now to Endeavour Silver. And Dan Dickson, the CEO, is here with us. Good morning to Vancouver. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Jochen.
Yeah, thanks and great taking the time. Long time that we did talk, honestly, and it was very sad what happened, of course, with Bedford Cook, but you have taken
Yes.
over, and that is all really fantastic now, and you are executing what I would say Brad's dream was all the time with the Terronera project. But before we come to the Terronera project, we should talk shortly about 2023, because you are producing gold and silver from two mines, Guanaceví and Bolañitos. So how was the year for you?
You know what? 2023 was an interesting year. I mean, we came out of 2021 and 2022 and we exceeded our production guidance. 2023, we actually came in line with our production guidance. We produced 8.7 million silver equivalent ounces. Our guidance range was 8.7 to 9.3. So, 8.5 to 9.3, and we came in at 8.7 million ounces. And so it was kind of an average year. I think a little bit from our standpoint, what we've seen again across the industry, and especially in Mexico, is increase in costs. Our margins got squeezed, and I think that's reflective in our share price. People are somewhat concerned with cash flow coming out of our assets, and Guanaceví continues to produce positive after-tax cash flow, and similar with Bolañitos. But nonetheless, I mean, it's our job to kind of contain our costs as best we can. The foreign exchange rate of the Mexican peso to the US dollar appreciated in 2023 almost 15%. That had a big impact on our costs. And so ultimately, 2023's financial information will come out in March. Q3 was a tough quarter from a cost perspective. We expect Q4 to be better. And I think we'll see that when we report early March.
Okay. Where have you seen I would say the highest cost rises for the production? And are there any possibilities what you can do against? I mean, you cannot do something against currency rates, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
are there any possibilities where you can say, oh, we can change something here?
Yeah, there's always little things that you can change. I mean, I think Guanaceví and Bolañitos are pretty mature assets, and the scale and the scope that we are at those operations are what they are. In the past, we kind of always pushed on production tonnage going through the plant, which helped reduce on a per ton basis or a per ounce basis. But ultimately, with where we are, the ore bodies are what they are. There's potential to expand ore bodies, but it's little things that we can do from an operational standpoint. Obviously, continue to make sure we're using the right amount of inputs and being as efficient as possible. In the third quarter, we had some ventilation and pumping issues out of Guanaceví, and ultimately the mine got too hot. So our productivity dropped because we had to put some labor into our labor every 35, 45 minutes had to go to a cooling chamber, just obviously for their well-being. We've fixed that now. In Q4, that temperature came down with ventilation and proper pumping put in certain areas, and that's continued to improve. So little things like that to improve productivity is important. Obviously, going to our suppliers and making sure we're getting the best price for the inputs as we can. We've seen a significant cost increase in steel, cyanide. These are inputs that we need to mine and to execute, and it's the normal ebbs and flows that we see sometimes in the commodity space on commodities that we use. But we're always looking for productivity gains and ultimately try to lower our costs as best we can. I think for 2024 and coming into the year, maybe we'll get some reprieve from the foreign exchange standpoint. That was a big part of 2023. And even if not, we've guided based on a 17 to 1 FX rate, 17 Mexican pesos to $1 US. So those assets are mature, and we'll do our best to drive down costs. But there's not huge gains to be had.
Okay. As you said, those assets are mature, but I think you had still some very good brownfields exploration results. So what is going on with the exploration, maybe also for this year, and how would that help you to enlarge the mine life of those assets?
Yeah, I mean, we're all about extending mine life. So we've been at Guanaceví for 18 years. We've never had more than a 2-year reserve life. In 2019, we made a significant discovery. It's on a concession we call El Curso. That concession is actually not owned by us. We lease it from Mr. Slim. Carlos Slim is one of the wealthiest men in Mexico, obviously a very successful businessman. His company, Frisco, owns a lot of concessions in the Guanaceví district. So we cut a sliding scale royalty deal with him in 2019, and we've been mining from El Curso for a significant portion of time. And it's a significant amount of our production at this point. Almost 80-85% of our production is coming out of that area. The issue is it's very high grade, but we pay a very high royalty cost. Mr. Slim negotiated a 16% royalty when silver is over $25 and between $20 and $25 silver, he gets a 13% royalty. So our cost to operate is what it is, and that will fluctuate with the silver price, but it's almost $5 an ounce that we pay to Mr. Slim. Now, when we originally cut that deal, it was about kind of a 1/3, 2/3 economics, 1/3 going to him and 2/3 coming to Endeavour Silver. Because of the margin squeeze, that's split. Obviously, as a royalty agreement, he doesn't bear any risk to that. But there's other concessions in the area, and we've been focused on that he owns and focused on some of our concessions. Last year in 2023, we put out really good results, and it's what we've always done at Guanaceví. Kind of, we've gone down to the next pearl on the necklace, so to speak, and replace what we mined, and that's going to continue here in 2023. And for 2024, there's some connections to what's an old mine called Terronera 2 and Terronera 4. We're going to drill through that. We expect to continue to add resources and ultimately extend mine life. So right now we have 2 to 3 years of reserve life at Guanaceví. Again, we've had 2 to 3 years for 18 years. So we'll keep to add that. So we have 5-7 years in front of us. Bolañitos, again, we had very positive drill results in 2023. We put those out about September. Again, adding life to the mine. What we've mined, we've replaced. And it's just a cost benefit. As we get into different areas, we can drill from underground at a much cheaper cost than drilling from surface. So that's what we've done. Bolañitos, we have a 2-year mine life with reserves. Expectations is we can be there a lot longer than that. There is perspective in the area still. Around us is another Mexican conglomerate, Fresnillo. They own a significant amount of concessions in the area. And we have concessions too that we continue to look at and drill for. Our issue more at Bolañitos comes down to boundaries and where we are with the mines. So that's why we're probably not as excited about the long-term future of Bolañitos, but there's still potential there. I mean, our biggest discovery at Bolañitos was about 2011. We found 6 blind from surface veins. So there's always potential and possibilities for that. And Bolañitos for us was our cash cow. It's one of the key assets that we built this company off of. And like I say, there's still potential there. We just got to do our work. We've got a plan of about $1.2 million to spend in 2024 at Bolañitos. So there's things that we think we can bring in and continue to extend mine life and continue to be at Bolañitos hopefully for the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, super. Then let's come to the future. I think this is super important, the Terronera project. So it looks like that you guys would go by the end of this year into production. You have a $120 million debt facility and a $60 million at the market financing going on, but I see the total direct and indirect costs are $271 million. So how do you finance the difference, and what is the reason that we are now talking about a good $40 million plus in costs?
Yeah, let me touch on the 270 and how we're going to pay for that. So we announced construction, which was, as you say, was originally $230 million, and we just recently came out for a year-end update where we expect that cost to go to, and I can get into that after. But when we announced that $230 million build, we secured $120 million of debt financing through 2 European banks, high-quality banks, a lot of hurdles to jump over, a lot of ESG requirements, a lot of financial covenants, but all that was designed for the lowest cost of capital. I think it works really well because there's a lot of validation around the Terronera project with independent engineers coming on and looking on behalf of those banks. So we're very proud that we were able to secure that. And then the $110 million was effectively coming from our balance sheet and our cash flow. At the time, we probably had about $130 million of working capital, or our cash balance, I think, would have been about $65 million at April of 2023 when we announced that construction decision. So we felt we were fully funded. We haven't drawn down on that debt yet. We expect to draw down on that debt here in Q1 2024. But ultimately, from April to December, we spent about $120 million. At the end of Q3, we had $40 million in cash. We had $80 million in working capital. Q4, again, financial reporting hasn't come out publicly, but it will be similar to what we had at Q3. So we feel like we're fully funded. And you're right that we do have a $60 million at-the-market facility in place. And that's going to help ultimately if we have overruns beyond the $270 million or even up to that 270 to give us some wiggle room. But like I say, we're fully funded. We haven't touched that debt yet. We do expect to draw down on that facility this quarter and ultimately have enough capital in place to be into commissioning in Q4 of 2024. And I think one of the positives that when we announced our news release, of course, not going from 230 million to 270 is a positive, but we are still on track for Q4 2024 commissioning. So we haven't had a blowout because of productivity. We've had increase in costs because of a number of factors. We talked about the foreign exchange rate. In 2023, it appreciated 15%. We estimated our build costs using 20-to-1 FX rate. It ended up being 17.5 last year. So that was part of it. But inside that and underlying it, we had about $8 million increase in steel costs, straight up with inflation and some detailed engineering that required more tonnage requirements. We had $11 million more in e-houses and transformers. So that's electrical mechanical work.
And this is what you really need.
Higher. Yeah, and that's a function of inflation and what's happening in the copper market, what's happening locally in Mexico. There's some big infrastructure projects going on through the government that affected the availability of steel, and we wanted to make sure we secured our steel. We are erecting steel right now at site, so it's important that we were able to get it. Other little things, $5 million more on our tailings dam. So during 2023, we completed all our geotechnical work. For seismic load issues, we just had to increase a key and to make sure that ultimately our tailings dam is going to meet all specifications required, for obvious reasons. So of that's probably $25 million. And then additionally to all of that, we're going to bring in more mining equipment to make sure we can sustain our 2,000 tons per day. Ultimately, that mining equipment was expected in our sustaining capital, so we've moved that forward. And that's a big chunk of that $40 million. And inside that, and those are the specifics, from April to December, about $15 to $18 million was roughly attributed to foreign exchange. So again, not pleased that we're going from 230 to 270 million dollars, but we are fully funded and we are on time for production. And when Terronera gets into production, using today's prices from an after-tax standpoint, well north of $55 million of after-tax cash flow for 2025.
Okay, super.
We're excited about the project.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if I look at your press release here, I think Terronera shall produce like 4 million ounces silver and 38,000 ounces gold. You produced 37,858 last year. So that would double your gold output, which is outstanding, I would say. And it would bring up the silver output by a good 70-80% approximately.
Yeah.
And what would be the costs anticipated for Terronera production? Because I remember when we discussed, Brett and myself, and I think also with you, some years ago, there was like, this will be in the low single digit AISC. Of course, times have changed, we know that all, but will that still be something like, I would say, let's say a $10 AISC production per ounce of silver?
I mean, no. So when we came out in April 2023 with our optimized plan, so we had a feasibility study completed in 2021, and we optimized that feasibility study and really went from a 1,700 ton per day project to a 2,000 ton per day project. Obviously, the economies of scale brought down our cost per ton, and obviously the ounce cost per ounce as well. The reason why we're so excited about Terronera is because of its cost profile. And as you touched on, 4 million ounces of silver, about 35 to 38,000 ounces of gold per year. So it almost doubles our production. And right now, Guanaceví and Bolañitos are mature mines, kind way to say sometimes a higher cost mine, just where they are in their life cycle. Terronera effectively cuts our consolidated production cost profile in half. And that's a function of, like you say, almost a double of production. but its cost profile from a cash cost basis using $15.75 gold is negative 20 cents per ounce of silver. So
Oops.
all the gold that we're producing pays for the cost to produce the silver. The silver is coming for free. So 4 million ounces of silver times $20, it's $80 million of cash flow from silver. From an all-in sustaining cost, again using $15.75 gold, the all-in sustaining cost over the life of the mine is projected to be about $2.
Wow.
So again, if you use $2,000, $500 more, you're looking at negative all-in sustaining costs. So again, the gold's going to pay for all the sustaining capital over the life of the project, exploration, some allocation of G&A, and then the silver comes effectively for free. So significant operating cash flow, and it's a function of the ore body, the grades, the shallowness, the thickness of Terronera, the minimal development that we need after we get into initial production. So it's an asset that amongst our peer group, it sits in the lowest decile from a cost perspective, which is phenomenal. And it allows us to manage the business, our mining business, a lot easier when you have a consistent level of cash flow, whereas Guanaceví and Bolañitos, they're very leveraged to the price of silver. So we get very volatile cash flows, and ultimately Terronera will be relatively smooth. And we're excited what that will do for Endeavour and ultimately our shareholders.
Okay, super. So that would mean to me also that you have an outstanding leverage on the silver price then.
Well, right now we have phenomenal leverage on the silver price, and it's a function of 60% of our revenue comes from silver and 40% comes from gold. So we are fully exposed to precious metals, but because of those margins that we currently have at Guanaceví and Bolañitos, you got huge margin growth. If silver moves from $23 to 25, 26, you got massive amount of exponential expansion. That's great. Obviously, through our portfolio, we've got about 100 million ounces of silver defined at Terronera, but we're really excited about another project that we picked up in 2021, closed it in 2022, and that's the Pitarrilla project, where we have over 600 million ounces of silver defined, plus zinc, plus lead there. It's one of the world's largest undeveloped silver deposits, and then there's a couple ways we're going to look at it. Obviously, if we're in today's price environment, we're underground vein miners. It's what we know, it's what we do, and there's a significant potential at Pitarrilla with underground mining it. So the leverage in Endeavour, because with the silver price, not only at our existing operations, but our growth portfolio is phenomenal.
Okay, so where would that mine be then located, that project?
Yeah, Pitarrilla is also in Mexico. It's about 3 hours from Guanaceví. It's in the state of Durango, which is one of the best jurisdictions in Mexico, one of the best states when it comes to mining. There's a long history of mining in the state of Durango. It's where Endeavour got started. But Silver Standard or SSR, they held it before us. They'd fully permitted a plant. They'd fully permitted a mine. There's a tailings dam that still needs to be permitted. There's a camp that's been built there. They invested almost $145 million into the project prior to us acquiring it. They made a nice discovery in 2002, put out a pre-feasibility study on that project in 2009 at $11 silver. And then silver went from $11 to $48. They reconceptualized the project and looked at it from an open pit standpoint. And that's when they ended up defining about 550 million ounces of silver through 225,000 meters of drilling. So there's been a lot of work, a lot of metallurgical work on that project. It now just sits in our hands because SSR transformed their company into a gold company and really had no other assets in Mexico. And so we were excited to pick it up. But right now, our main focus is Terronera and getting Terronera into production. But if we can move our development team from Terronera into Pitarrilla, I think it's something that is a very compelling growth story right now for Endeavour. And to get back to your question, the leverage to silver.
Exactly. And that would mean that that could be then in the future your fourth mine, Pitarrilla.
Yeah, that's our expectation is we want to grow. And right now we produce 8.5 million silver equivalent ounces. Terronera will take us into the 15 range. To be a senior silver producer, we think we have to produce about 25 million ounces to kind of be considered with those peers. But we have a plan, and there's not many of our peers that have growth built into their portfolio. And we do. So if we can execute on Terronera, I think that will give us a runway to be able to execute Pitarrilla and a way to get there and get to about 23, 25 million ounces of silver production on an annualized basis.
Wow.
So it's exciting.
Sounds like a positive game plan, I would say. Super.
We like to think so.
Yeah, I remember also a project Parral. What is going on there? Because I thought always that could be also something like a core asset, maybe a future mine.
Yeah, no, Parral we really like too. I mean, we've spent about $3 million at Parral over the last 12
Mhm,
months. It's a project in Mexico as well. It's in Chihuahua. It's a historical mine. It's got underground development. We can go down and touch the face of the veins. We've been drilling there off and on. We shut it down during COVID. Obviously,
mhm,
we couldn't get drillers to site. Started drilling there again in 2021 and 2022.
mhm,
Uh, we've probably defined close to 60 million ounces of silver there. And we, at the beginning of 2023, it was really Pitarrilla and Parral were on the same parallel path towards economic assessments.
mhm,
For Parral, it's a smaller project than Pitarrilla, of course. But because of the historical workings there and the infrastructure there, it'd be a lot cheaper to get into production.
mhm,
But the leverage wouldn't be as great. It's running about 300 grams silver with a little bit of lead and zinc. So 90% of the revenue mix
mhm,
is effectively silver. And we like it. It's just the leverage isn't what Pitarrilla is. Some of the work that we've done to Pitarrilla has probably put it ahead of Parral. But it's a project that could come in behind it. It's a project that can move ahead of it again.
mhm,
We're going to go through an economic study on Parral this year, and then see where we sit. So
mhm.
again, as you touched on, a lot of leverage to silver in our
Yes.
in our portfolio, and
Yeah.
again, for us, it's just about what we can do from a resource allocation. We're trying to
Mhm,
protect our balance sheet and make sure we have all the capital that will go into Terronera this year for 2024. So there's only so much time from our exploration group and our development group that Pitarrilla has pushed a little bit ahead of Parral. But Parral is still something that we like, and it will have a long-term value for the company, absolutely, for sure.
mhm. Fantastic. Super. Dan, thank you very much for your time. We already have 22 minutes, but it's
Oh,
so
wow.
interesting to listen to you. And honestly, I have to buy some shares. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you right now, we're probably at a 5-year low, and that's a
Yeah.
sentiment of where we are in the marketplace. I think
Mhm,
today we're in the $1.50, $1.60 US range, and I'm frustrated a little bit with where our share price is,
mhm,
but it's a function of us being viewed as a developer, and people want to see execution on Terronera. It's our job as management to make sure we execute Terronera to be on time and be commissioned in Q4 and hopefully
mhm.
full year production in 2025. So it's an important year for us. If we can execute, that will get reflected in our share price and make sure that our shareholders are happy for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Super. Dan, thank you very much. As I said, for your time. Probably I see you at PDAC. And yeah,
Yep.
look really forward to that. Thank you very
Awesome.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jochen.
Yeah,
Have a good day.
you too. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dan Dickson, the CEO of Endeavour Silver, and you heard it. Lots is going on in the company, but mostly important, there will be by the end of the year latest with Terronera in production, and that would almost double their output from last year in silver and gold, and also brings down significantly the cash costs, but also the AISC. And don't forget, with Pitarrilla and also Parral, they have two great projects in the pipeline for the next whatever 5 years, I would call it, to bring them also probably in production. And I would say this is a fantastic growth story. And the greatest thing is, well, not for the company, but for us as investors, the share price is really on the 5-year low level. And also in our charts, the share price touched exactly on our lower price target, which I think is a fantastic opportunity to get some. So check out Endeavour Silver. I will do that definitely. Thanks for watching us, and bye bye from Switzerland.